Hey everybody! Every time this year, the Game of the Year nominees come out and are announced, and there is a winner crowned. So for the Game of the Year, Spiel des Jahres, and for the Strategy Game of the Year, Kennerspiel des Jahres, I'm going to chime in and give you my thoughts on the nominees and the recommended list, so stay tuned. Okay, so I would love to start at the Game of the Year nominees and giant recommended games list. And this is for the family game or the entry-level game or beginner gamer, where these games take between 30 and 45 minutes to play. And I have to say, it's a really strong list. However, I have not played many of them. I've played 3, and only one of those 3 is one of the official nominees. So I want to chime in on that and just say that it's a fantastic game. The one I'm talking about is Cascadia. Cascadia is a beautiful game of open drafting where players will select a pair of a terrain type on a hex and an animal disc that they place into their player area, continually building their habitat of all these different terrain and animals in configurations that are pre-selected. And so there are ways to score where you say, I want all of my hawks to do this, and I want my elk to be in this configuration, or I need bears to do this, or salmon to do that. And so there are these 5 types of animals, and you are changing those cards out every time you play, so the replayability is high. The fact that you can play the game in 30 to 45 minutes is really high, and the entry into the game is so accessible, and so teaching it is really fun and easy. And then you just want to play again right away. So I think Cascadia is a fantastically strong nominee for Game of the Year. The other 2 games are Scout and Top 10. Now, do I think that Cascadia is going to beat those 2? Probably. I think that it just definitely has the most traction in the United States. I think it has really reached a lot of tables. And so name recognition wise, the accessibility for just getting the game and playing the game is really high too. So I think that Cascadia is probably going to win, but that is partially because I haven't played the other 2 nominees and I haven't experienced what those offer as well. So for me, I'm putting my vote behind Cascadia. There are 2 other games though, before I move on to the Kennerspiel, that I want to talk about that are on the recommended list, and that is for just Game of the Year. And one of them is Seven Wonders Architects. I like that game a lot. It's come up on a couple of my top lists, and I've also just talked about it a lot. It's really, really cool. If you want to see a full playthrough of that, I have a playthrough, a run-through over at Rahdo's channel for Rahdo Runs Through It. It was the very first video I did for his channel as I joined the team. So I think it's a great game. Again, that has open drafting as well, where you're picking a card from either the player, between you and the player to your right or you and the player to your left, and you're adding and building your wonder. And so you just have 5 levels of it, and whoever builds their wonder first triggers the end of the game, and you count up all the points. So it's very Seven Wonders-esque. It's a strong game. I really, really like it. The other game that is recommended is So Clover, and So Clover is a word game. It is a fantastic cooperative game that, again, just blew me away with its simplicity, but with how fun it is. And so you are essentially leaving clues, you're leaving breadcrumbs for other players at the table to put together and to guess, what was Kim thinking when she wrote this word? Was she putting these 2 cards together, or these 2 cards, or these 2 cards? And it's just a really cool game. It's super replayable and plays up to 6, and so I think it's a strong game as well. But those 2 are nominees, and so with those out of the running of the ones I've played, I sure do think Cascadia is going to take that for Game of the Year 2022. Moving on to the Kennerspiel des Jahres nominees. These are for the Strategy Game of the Year nominees. There's some really, really strong contenders here, and I love the recommended list. There's actually just a total of 6 games, 3 nominees, 3 recommended. Of the 6, I have played 5. So this is where I really feel like I've got something to say about the nominees for the Strategy Game of the Year 2022. The 3 nominated games are Cryptid, Dune Imperium, and Living Forest. Now, of these three, I have not played one of them, which means I've played all three of the recommended. The game I haven't played is Living Forest, so I'm not going to necessarily comment on that game other than by saying it's a nominee. I just haven't had a chance to play it or to find it. So that one sorely is being left out of my commentary, but it's simply because I don't know. I don't have an experience with it, so I don't feel comfortable talking about what the game offers players. So what I'll do is I'll just tell you what the other games did for me as a player, and I'm going to start with Cryptid. Cryptid is a fascinating deduction game where you are giving players information about where your location is. It's a clever system. I had a really good time playing it. I adore deduction games. I can't even begin to tell you. The only issue with this, and I think everybody kind of warns people against this or just says be careful, because it's a deduction game that's not based on the game itself giving you information, which means that it could give you perfect information if it's planned properly. It's susceptible to player fallibility. So if a player accidentally gives you bad information, which is incorrect, it kind of throws off the whole game because you're not able to deduce where they are using logic because the logic doesn't line up. And so you could really come across a game that just kind of is like, lost and you have to essentially start over or try again. And so just be really careful that when you give information, you are doing your best to give perfect information, right? Accurate information that keeps the game running. So that's my only bit of advice. That's Cryptid though. Really, really cool game. Now the next game is Dune Imperium. And for me, when I first played it, knowing that it was in the Dune universe, meh. I mean, I'm not like the biggest Dune fan, so the IP for me, I could take it or leave it. But the game itself and its core mechanics, wow. Pairing worker placement with deck building and all the different this and that's and all the different places on the map, really cool. There's this final end round where you have battle and you also are working your way up on this track with these different factions. You're gathering all the resources to gain more workers, to do this, to get the cards, to do that. Your cards have multifunction use and you're trying to decide, what do I want to do on this particular card? Do I want to play it to go here? Do I want to save it for the stuff at the bottom? Do I want to go and do this? So there's so many different choices in that game. It is a real juicy strategy game that is competitive. So for me, Dune Imperium has Kennerspiel written all over it, in my opinion. It is a nice hour-long strategy game that is replayable, fascinating, and of course set in a world that is pretty cool. I absolutely don't want to leave out the recommended list because I think the 3 recommended games are really strong. So much so that I think everyone's probably really upset that Ark Nova did not make it into the 3 nominated games this year. It probably would have won, I think. If it'd been in the top 3, it would have beaten out Dune Imperium, which I am saying is my pick for Game of the Year for Kennerspiel 2022. But I think Ark Nova is, again, that strategy game that just has strategy and planning and everything in spades. It's beautiful. It's got a smart system. It's got a lot of different mechanics that I think borrowed from here, 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 and here. And if you want to know more about what Ark Nova offers, go and check out my kind of playthrough where I just do a turn or two, which allows you to see all the different parts and components and actions and the boards and everything. So I've got another video, just go type it in, search for Ark Nova. I'll also put that link in the notes below in the description so that you can check out what I think about Ark Nova. Another recommended game is Cora, and Cora is a really good strategy game, I have to say. You are building up your empire using action selection cards paired with dice, and you are kind of upgrading your civilization, getting better and better abilities if you want to work on that particular track, and you are also gaining these cards that allow you to do your actions even better and cooler. So it's really smart. There's a beautiful player board. It doesn't take up that much space because it's really just what you're doing with your cards and your dice. And again, you're kind of civ building inside of your own little player area. It's a beautiful game. It's a smart game. I think that game takes a couple plays, but it's nice and juicy, a lot like Dune Imperium. I would actually kind of pair Dune Imperium at the same level, the same time, the same investment, the same kind of strategy with each other. They're right there at the same level. So Cora is another strong recommended, not nominee for the strategy game of the year. And lastly is Witchstone. I played a copy of this at Board Game Geek Con in November of last year, and I was taken aback by the different ways to victory. I find this game to be really interesting. It's a little deceiving at first because some players look like they're getting really, really far ahead on the point track because they're doing different things, and there are other strategies that are kind of hidden points and you don't really score them until the end. But there's a beautiful board where players are essentially going to these different connections and networking all these different spaces and making these magic connections on this central board. There's also a place to gather cards, and the cards allow you to do a lot of different things, and you are using these two-sided tiles, and so you're picking them up and you're kind of using them like Quirkle, where you have two sides to something. It's like a domino. You also collect things and build on an individual player board that allow you to work your way around this map, which of course you're not actually going to complete. You want to do everything, but it's really, really engaging. So there's like that kind of competition in the center board, particularly for the cards, but then you also have this own little player area where you're just kind of like working your own little puzzle. And so I think that is just, again, right there in the wheelhouse for that strategy game. So I think the Kennerspiel nominees, the list for that, insanely strong. I mean, those three, really, really good games. So again, that leaves me with Cryptid and Dune Imperium, because I haven't played the other nominee, and I'm going to give it to Dune Imperium. So yes, those are my picks. That's my suggestion. That's who I think is going to win for Game of the Year and for Kennerspiel. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to find out who's going to win, but I have to tell you, there were some really, really strong nominees and recommended games in these lists, so you should check out all the ones that I talked about that I have played. All right? I will see you later, and good luck to the nominees.